Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Granada Forum on this November 3rd, 2005. Tonight we're going to have Mr. Bill Thornton, who's going to talk about, well, he represents the nitty-gritty law school. He's going to talk about all kinds of different things in the law. So without any further introduction, let me introduce you to a wonderful man, Mr. Bill Thornton.
Thank you. Here's the secret mic. Okay, well, we're going to talk about republic versus democracy and how it affects your sovereignty as an individual. Now, basically, before I really get into that, I want to talk about the system that we're in. You see, when the Founding Fathers put together this Constitution, they had it up to their eyeballs with authority. They saw the abuses, they saw the murders, they saw the robberies and so on that was done by the English military. Okay? They saw how the military would just simply move into somebody's home because they wanted it, you know. And so they tried to put together a system that would endure, that would preserve your freedoms. And so they basically said, look, we're self-governing. Self-government means you tell you what to do. And you're not governed by anybody. You are governed by yourselves. The only limitation on your self-government is that you cannot govern yourself in such a way that you take away from the sovereignty of someone else. And as long as you stay within that limitation, well, then you mind your own business, they'll mind their own business. That's kind of the general theme. But they also recognized that there were a couple of power structures out there that they had to contend with. There was England, France, Spain, Mexico. All of them would love to take over the United States. Or at least it wasn't known as the United States then. But they would like to take them over. So in order to have a force that would meet their force, they put together this government. And the whole idea was to have a government that was big enough, strong enough to protect us from the outside world, while at the same time having no authority to deal with the people themselves. We, the people, had the common law. And the common law worked well. Everybody knew it. As a matter of fact, there was an admiral that said that he had a real problem in prosecuting people. A couple of reasons. One of them is by night they were out doing things against the British government, and by day they were sitting on the grand juries. And another problem is that everybody in the United States is a lawyer. The English bookstores sold more law books to America than they sold on the British Isles. We, the people, really took this whole idea of law seriously. A tremendous percentage of us knew and understood the system we were living in, and knew and understood the common law. Well, of course, that's a tough thing to deal with for bureaucrats. So after the Constitution was put together, they managed to sneak through a little item called the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment created a new class of human being called citizen of the United States. And you look, it's a very clear definition. It very clearly says that if you are born in the United States or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction, then you're a citizen of the United States. Now, you can be born or naturalized, but not subject. What would you be then? Well, you'd be one of the people. Okay, because the people own the government, and the government owns the citizens. So they also took over in the 1850s the school system. So the very first mandatory school system, now there were public schools, okay, but not many. Most of them were private because we were an agrarian society and the farmers got together and hired a teacher. But the government couldn't stand all that education. So what they did, they had a few public schools, but the first mandatory public school was set up in around 1850 or so, and it was populated under military supervision. The parents didn't want the kids to go to that kind of school, and they forced the issue. Of course, I think it was illegal, but you know, when you're talking raw power, it's pretty hard to resist. And why was it so important to the government? Because once they got command of the schools, setting the curriculum, then from the 1850s to the 1950s, over a 100-year period, they phased out the subject of civics and replaced it with a new subject called American government. So when you and I went to school, we learned American government. What is civics? If you look it up in the dictionary, civics is specifically that branch of political philosophy dealing with personal rights. So you drop civics, you bring in that branch of political philosophy dealing with government, and you have a bunch of people who are no longer ignorant, no longer knowledgeable about their rights. When I was a kid, somebody once told me that the two most important subjects to learn in school, beating everything else, the first one was English, and the second one was civics. And at that time, I had not a clue, but somehow it stuck in my mind, and now I understand it. Yeah, if you don't know what your rights are, you can't protect them, and what good is the rest? And how are you going to understand it unless you handle the English language well? If you don't have good command of the English language, you got a problem. You got to learn how to spell, you got to learn how to write, you got to learn how to read, you got to learn how to detect propaganda and separate it from facts and valid thinking and so on. Well, that all comes with the study of English and the study of personal rights. From there, once you have your full rights and once you do have the ability to communicate with others, everything else comes into play. You can do what you choose once you have those two subjects under control. What can you do if you have no rights? Doesn't matter how much English you know. And if you have all rights, what does it matter if you can't communicate? If you don't, So you have to have both. And so I have since learned that, yeah, those are the two most important subjects. And I'd like to see civics brought back into the school. No school teaches civics that I know of. Okay, none, anywhere. What you're getting here is a portion of a civics class. Now, if you want the whole thing, talk to Dennis Whipple, because Dennis has on the website at 1215.org, you go there, and he has a list of some of the past presentations on the subject. There's an 8-hour presentation which covers the subject of sovereignty and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'd suggest you get that one. And just so you know, I am advertising these CDs, but I get no benefit out of it. Okay? Whatever you pay, that never goes to my pocket. So, but I am encouraging you to get it, because if anybody wants to call me, all I say is, look, you got to watch that first so that we can speak a common language. Until you learn the language that I speak, the legal language, then I'd spend all my time putting on a private seminar. Far better you spend the $20 for the CD and or DVD actually, and get the information. And it's better presented than I could present it individually, because I was prepared on the day I presented it. Anyhow, this is a labor of love. I want to share the information, and that's why I'm here today, fundamentally. We have the foundation here, and what you see here, by the way, pretty much reflects what's on the website. And the CD that I passed out a few minutes ago is exactly what you see here, except for a couple kind of tiny details. Because you'll notice that on the CD, there's a date, and that's the date that it was created. And if you find somebody else has a CD, just look at the date on it too, because whatever has the latest date, that has the latest information. Okay? So some people, like Dennis Whipple, get an advanced copy. I didn't give him one tonight because he has one already that's later. Excuse me. Anyhow, so let's go into the foundation. Basically, in the foundation, there's, can everybody see the wording that's up there? Is it large enough for you? Can you see it? Can you see it easily? Or would this be better? Is that better? Okay. Want it bigger? Okay. Wise men are instructed by reason, men of less understanding by experience, the most ignorant by necessity, and the beasts are instructed by nature. Anyway, that was by Cicero when he wrote some letters to Atticus. Anyhow, the important thing to understand about the law that as I present it to you, requires thinking. This is not something that you can take a form, fill it in, and expect to get results. You have to be flexible, and when a problem comes up, a legal problem, you've got to be able to shift with the need. And you have to reason your way through. Many of the things that we did to get to the point where we were done because we reasoned our way to that point. Had we relied on prior case law or prior experience of other people, we wouldn't have made it. Okay? One of the things that you can do when you understand this stuff that's on that CD I gave you is you can go into court, and if a judge makes a decision, you can create your own order reversing the judge's decision. Okay? And he's subject to it. In one case, we had a judge who didn't get the message. When we issue an order, and I say we because there's other people involved here that have made their contributions. It's not me. I'm just one cog in this wheel. But when we issue an order, we also issue a little mini course in law to explain to the judge why it is that he's number 2 and the person issuing the order is number 1. And when they read it, it's all there. Case law, statutory law, common law, it's all there. It explains it all. And by the way, you have an example of an order on that CD that you can see how it was done. We had one case where the judge was given an order, reversing his order, and he went along for a while. He was good for a while. Then a few months later, he forgot his position, and he issued a second order. And it was a serious enough order where he was interfering with the process. And so we issued a second order vacating that order as well. But we didn't stop there. We also fined him for contempt of court. You can do that with a judge. We fined him $1. He never paid it. Now, there's a lot of people, if you look at the record, you can see that he never paid it. A lot of people look at that record, and without thinking it through, will assume, well, so what good did it do to find him in contempt of court? Well, I have to admit, it didn't do any good as far as the record shows. But what really happened was that within 30 days after he was found in contempt of court, the presiding judge pulled him off, reassigned him to a dark corner of the county in a small criminal court, and then they brought in their top gun, a judge who was absolutely expert in the common law, was a member of our judges group that studied common law. They lived and breathed it. They loved it. It was their hobby. And this guy that they brought in also at one time was the presiding judge of the appellate department of the Superior Court, which this is a guy who writes case law. They don't let guys write case law unless they got their act together.